She brought me to the hospital and left. First she said she'd fetch paperwork, then texted, "You won't make it, don't waste my nerves." A week later, I woke up in an empty ward. No money, no papers, no help. But honor isn't a bank balance. It's the way you hold your head in the worst hour. I gathered proof and dragged the truth into daylight. In the courtroom, I heard her excuses while whispering to myself, "I deserve better." She was sentenced, not for vengeance, but for justice. That was my choice. My name is Arthur Hale. I am 72 years old and a grandfather to two loud, beautiful children who call me Pop. My son is James. His wife is Nora. Before the hospital and the white lights and the empty wallet, my life was ordinary. I woke early, boiled water in the dented kettle my wife favored, and opened the curtains to let the morning climb over the piano and the framed photographs. The house is a modest two-story I paid off the slow way. Overtime, packed lunches, repairs done with my own hands. It smells of lemon oil and old books because my wife, Ruth, trained it that way. Her portrait hangs in the living room. A soft smile. Eyes that always seem to be listening. When she was alive, the house was the two of us. After she passed, it was me and the echoes. And I learned that if you keep a place clean and purposeful, it keeps you clean and purposeful in return. I am retired from 38 years as an electrician. I still label my basement shelves with a soldier's neatness. Screws, anchors, wire nuts, fuses. A man can forget his keys and his appointment times at 72, but he should not forget where the tools go. Order settles the mind. Paper settles the truth. That is why my file drawer has a second file drawer inside it, a habit only an old man could love. Deeds copied, receipts clipped, the will in its transparent sleeve with names spelled correctly and signatures the ink could be proud of. I kept a photocopy of the will in my leather satchel because I trusted paper more than I trusted anyone's memory, including my own. James grew up under my hands and Ruth's patience. He is a good man with a soft look that belongs to his mother. He teaches middle school science and has a way of talking about stars that makes 11-year-olds put down their phones. He took to fatherhood the way a duck takes to a pond. Awkward at first, then natural, then joyful. When I watch him tie a tiny shoe or kneel to pick up a dropped mitten, I see the boy he was and the man he is at the same time. That is the magic trick of being a father. You see past and present layered like glass. His wife, Nora, came into our family with bright laughter and a firm handshake. She is quick with a casserole and quicker with a plan. The first time she came to my house, she stepped inside and ran her finger along the windowsill. Not to judge the dust, I told myself, but to feel the grain. She brought me lemon bars in a tin and fussed over the picture of Ruth as if Ruth might step down from the frame. I wanted very much to love her the way I loved any woman who loved my son. I wanted our family to be whole. Sundays were our day. James brought the children, and I made scrambled eggs the old way with a wooden spoon and low heat. My grandson liked to count the pictures on the wall and tell me the numbers as if I had never learned them. My granddaughter found the violin case every time and said, "Play it, Pop," and I would say, "Your grandmother's hands lived here," and close it softly. We ate. We told the same stories. We laughed in the places Ruth had scripted with years of repetition. When the children ran outside, James helped me with whatever needed doing. A gutter, a hinge, a stubborn faucet. He would say, "You still have the touch, Dad," and I would feel 10 feet tall in my own kitchen. If there were cracks before the break, they were hairline and polite. Nora disliked paper piles. She would tidy my desk by putting the tidy into her purse. Just for the afternoon, she would say, to scan and file in a shared drive so we would all know where things were. She believed in modernizing. She said banks were safer when everything lived on a screen you could lock. She said I should add her as a backup contact for my doctor because James was so busy. She pressed it kindly, like a nurse guiding an old man into a chair. When I hesitated, she made it a kindness to herself. "Please, Arthur," she would say. You know I will worry less if I can help. She also had a way of assuming my consent before she had it. At a barbecue, she told a cousin I was, finally, letting her streamline my bills. When I raised an eyebrow, she flicked her hand as if shooing a fly and said, "You will appreciate it when you see how tidy it looks." Everyone nodded because tidy sounds harmless. I did not argue at my own picnic. There were moments I pushed back. When she suggested combining my small savings accounts into one more efficient vehicle, I said no. When she asked to be added as an online user for my mortgage portal, in case, I said I would think about it and then forgot deliberately. When she recommended selling the house and downsizing to something easier, because stairs are the enemy of old knees, I said my knees and I would make our own peace. She smiled with all her teeth, but not her eyes. James drifted in the wake of these conversations like a man whose boat is tied to a larger boat. He has a good heart and a fear of conflict that makes detours of his sentences. If he ever felt squeezed between my caution and her ambition, he did not say so. When I asked him to help me update my will after a change in beneficiary rules, he said, "Let Nora do it, Dad." "She lives for this," I said. "I will do it myself." And he looked relieved. Whether for me or for her, I could not tell. I kept routines on purpose. Cash in the small safe behind the books. Keys on their hook by the door. Satchel on the chair with the squeak that Ruth never let me fix because she said it sounded like the house clearing its throat. I ate oatmeal most mornings and walked the neighborhood with a stick Ruth had carved our initials into the year we turned 50. Dependable habits are armor when you are old. They make the world predictable enough to stand upright inside it. The first sign that something had shifted came wrapped as thoughtfulness. Nora insisted on driving me to an appointment even though I said I could handle it. She tidied my mail as we waited for the nurse. She asked again about consolidating accounts, but this time she added a tiny tremor of fear. "Imagine if something happened and we had to find everything," she said, and I felt suddenly mean for disagreeing. After Ruth died, I learned that grief is a burglar that returns the first year to test your locks. I did not feel like arguing with a lock. Then there was a Tuesday night when I felt a hot rope pulling taut under my ribs. I sat down slowly so the room would not wobble. I told myself it was nothing and then remembered Ruth telling me not to name everything. Nothing. I called James. He was at work late and panicked at the sound of my voice. "I will get Nora," he said. "She is closer." "She will drive you to the hospital." Nora arrived fast, calm as if she had rehearsed. She helped me into my coat and paused, glancing at the desk. "Your satchel," she said. "Paperwork." She slipped my will copy into the pocket as if it were a kindness. I thanked her because I am not a man who forgets to thank people. I watched her lock my front door and pocket the key. Then I held on to the handle above the car window and breathed in small sips while she drove. If I am honest, I felt safe with her then. It is hard to admit a thing like that after what came next. I believed myself held by family. I believed a house is not just wood and paint but a promise everyone keeps together. I believed the word help always means what it says. On the way to the emergency room, Nora talked about efficiency in soft, looping sentences meant to comfort. She said, "Things will be smoother if I make a list." And, "Do not worry about bills." And, "We can make sure the future is off your shoulders." I nodded because fear makes men agreeable. The lights of the city moved across the windshield like fish under a boat, and I let myself imagine waking up to the laughing faces of my grandchildren and the calm of chores done. That was the last hour of my old life. I did not know it then. I only knew the careful hands on my arm, the kind words, the sensation of being ferried toward help. I did not know that kindness can be a rope if someone else is holding the other end. If you ask what I regret from before the hospital, it is not that I kept paper or that I kept my will close. It is that I mistook competence for care. It is that I said yes to being managed when I should have said no to being handled. It is that I trusted a smile that did not reach the eyes. A man can live 72 years and still learn the oldest lesson late. Family is not proof against hunger, and hunger wears nice clothes when it visits. The first thing I heard was a slow, patient beeping, like a metronome set by a stranger who did not care for my favorite songs. The light above me was the color of winter at noon. Ceiling tiles arranged themselves into a grid that looked like a map I could not read. My mouth was dry in a way that felt personal. When I tried to swallow, something tugged at my hand, tape over a tube, a clear lifeline stitched into my skin. I tested the world with small moves, fingers, then wrist. The blanket rasped like paper. A curtain sighed somewhere to my right. The other bed was bare, sheet folded into a soldier's square, the pillow centered and waiting for a head that had not arrived. I could smell antiseptic and something metallic, like a coin pressed too long against the tongue. Time was a matter I could not get my hands around. There was a corkboard with a date written in squeaky marker and a nurse's name in loopy script. The date was not the date I thought it should be. My chest counted that difference before my mind did. I closed my eyes and pawed back through memory, feeling for threads. The car seat, the handle above the window pressed into my palm, breathing in shallow sips while the streetlights moved like slow fish. A voice telling me we were almost there. Hands arranging my coat, brisk and careful. A promise to fetch paperwork from the house, said as if it were a gentle joke we both understood. A door opening. Cold air. The knowledge that if I let the cold air in, I would not be allowed to take it out with me. I opened my eyes. The hope that someone would be sitting in the chair by the window had been folded and put away with the spare blankets. No card, no flowers, no book with a thumb tucked in to keep my place. My nightstand drawer held a plastic cup with a straw and a packet of tissues. No leather satchel. No wallet. My hand moved to the place on my hip where a wallet should press its square reassurance. Flat. A feeling of being emptied, as if someone had turned my pockets inside out and left them like small flags. I told myself not to panic. Panic is messy and invites mistakes to sit down. I counted instead. Keys, cards, cash. Photocopy of the will. I could see each item in my mind as if I had spread them on my kitchen table. The table felt far away and very clean. A nurse walked in with a smile that reached her eyes. The kindness stung because it had not been mine for a while. She talked about a fever I did not remember and a gallbladder that had behaved like a thief. She used the word sepsis and then softened it with a phrase about how strong you are, which I decided to accept as both comfort and truth because I was still here to be comforted. When she left, I thanked her with a voice that sounded like it had been stored in a dusty drawer. I searched again, slower. Bottom of the drawer, pocket of the folded gown, under the pillow, as if I were a child who had hidden a tooth from the tooth fairy. Nothing. I checked the tray table. There was my phone, face spiderwebbed, as if someone had pressed it too hard against an answer it did not want to give. The battery icon was a red sliver. I pressed the button and the screen lifted like a tired eyelid. The lock screen held a waterfall of missed calls and a row of messages. I scrolled with the care of a man handling a family heirloom. There it was, a text. The name at the top was the name I had hoped would be a rope. The message was short enough to fit in the space where air should go. You won't make it. Do not waste my nerves. I read it once. I read it again. I felt the words settle on my chest and try to take root. I would not let them. An old part of me, the part that labels shelves and files receipts and copies deeds because paper is a better memory than a human one, sat up and took command. Do not look away, it said. Fix the details while they are fresh. Note the timestamp, the number, the spelling. Tell the truth to a machine so it can tell it back to a person later. There was a way for that sentence to break me. There was another way for it to be a tool. I thought of Ruth's favorite rule. Name the thing correctly, and it loses half its power, A message like that wants to be named cruelty or contempt or betrayal. Those are true names, but it has another name in a room where facts matter. It was ugly. It was also useful. Proof is often impolite. I pressed the call button and watched the tiny orange light bloom. The room kept beeping, patient and indifferent. A nurse with a soft voice lifted the curtain. I heard myself ask in the calm tone I used to use on humming breaker panels for a social worker. Not later. Now, please. She tilted her head, reading the way I clutched my phone, and said she would page 1. While I waited, I angled the cracked screen and took 3 screenshots of the message, just in case one turned out blurry. Battery at 9%. I could feel time leaking. I found the settings, turned brightness down, turned off everything I did not need. I wanted a charger. I wanted an ocean of power. I wanted my satchel. What I had was a hospital bed and a decision. Treat this like feelings, or treat it like evidence. Feelings later. Evidence now. The social worker arrived with a wheeled tablet and a badge that clicked lightly against her lanyard. "How can I help you?" she asked. "By helping me keep a record," I said. "Please print this message twice." I held the phone steady while she photographed the screen with her tablet, her hands forming a careful frame. She read the words. Her eyebrows did a small human thing and then flattened back into professional. She asked my permission to email the image to the hospital's patient relations inbox for preservation. I said yes. "Stamp it with the time you received it," I added, and she nodded. "Not her first rodeo," her eyes said. "Good." I asked for a printed copy. Then I asked for another. She printed both at the nurse's station on the kind of paper that curls at the corners. I signed and dated the bottom margins in block letters the way I had labeled breaker boxes for 40 years. I wrote copy 1 of 2 and copy 2 of 2. Old habits are only silly until you need them. Next, I want the visitor log for my room for the night I came in and the day after, I said. And your security camera stills of this doorway and the hallway that night. She hesitated, but not in a no way, more in a how fast way. "The visitor log is simple," she said. "Security footage requires a records request or a law enforcement case number." "I am the patient," I said, and felt my voice stay even while something under my ribs paced. "Please put in a preservation request today. I have been told some systems overwrite in days." She glanced toward the ceiling camera, made a note. 7 to 10 days, she said. "I will ask security to hold the relevant feeds." A nurse slid a clipboard toward me with a medical release. I signed with a hand that trembled once at the start and then found a groove. I watched my name crawl onto the page, steady enough. There were faint dots of dried blood under the tape on my IV. The skin at the edge had the soft thinness of old paper. "Capable," I told my hands. "You still do what I tell you." "Do you have a charger?" I asked, and heard the need in it. "Lost and found box," the nurse said, and left. The room exhaled. Somewhere outside, a code was called in a voice that did not sound like it wanted to frighten anyone. A cart rattled past like a small train. I could feel the hospital alive around me, a hive of mercy and routine. I counted losses with my tongue the way a man checks his teeth. Wallet gone, keys gone, satchel gone, photocopy of the will gone. Each loss had a taste. The nurse returned with a coil of mismatched cables. "Try these." One fit. The phone blinked, a thin thread of red inching greener. Relief is a dangerous feeling. It makes men sloppy. I told myself not to be grateful for a charger like it was salvation. It was just a tool that would let me do the next right thing. The social worker came back with a printout of the visitor sheet from my chart. The column for relationships stung. Family, family, family. I asked for the admissions face sheet, the page where they list your emergency contacts, who can speak for you, who cannot. She printed that too, and there was another small shift of air when I saw a number I did not recognize listed above my son's. "When was this updated?" I asked. "Night of admission," she said. "The clerk notes info provided by family." A useful sentence. I circled the timestamp and initialed it. "Please add to my chart that no changes to contacts or permissions will be accepted without my written consent," I said. "And note that I am not confused, not disoriented, and giving this instruction clearly." She nodded and typed. The sound of the keys was brisk, almost cheerful. It steadied me. I asked her to page security, to confirm the hold on cameras. She did. Security said they would place a retention flag on the feeds for my corridor, my door, and the main entrance from the hour I arrived until morning. "Our system overwrites at 10 days, the voice on her speaker said. "You are at day 7. 3 days left. A window the size of a postcard. A physician stepped in. A woman with kind eyes and a posture that said she had practiced bad news often enough to be good at it. "Mr. Hale," she said, "I am Dr. Farrell. You were very sick. Gallbladder infection went systemic. We gave you fluids, antibiotics, and watched you closely. You were out for about a week, on and off. You are past the dangerous part a week." The words swelled in my mind like a bruise. A week is enough time to do a lot of harm with a friendly face and a pen. I thanked her for the work they had done with a sincerity that surprised me. Gratitude and fury can stand shoulder to shoulder in a man. "Can you tell me the exact time I was admitted?" I asked. She checked her tablet. 11:47 p.m., she said. "Brought in by a relative." "You were febrile and in distress." "That matches," I said. And it did. It matched the reel of the car ride in my head and the text that had landed like a stone. When she left, I held my hands up in the light and studied them the way I used to study a delicate junction box, looking for hairline cracks, for signs of fatigue. Old hands. Capable hands. The sort of hands that can pull a wire through conduit without tearing the sheath. The sort of hands that can hold a pen steady enough to leave a trail anyone can follow. I decided that the next part would be my work. This time, I'll write this family's fate myself as my own revenge. Justice is near. Soon you will learn the worst of my son's betrayal. But before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. They called it discharge, but it felt like being unhooked from a cliff. The nurse peeled the stickers from my chest one by one. Each came away with a soft sting and a ghost of my skin. She slid the IV out, pressed gauze to the spot, taped it down with a tidy cross. "Lightheaded is normal," she said. "Sit before you stand. Stand before you walk." I nodded as if she were teaching me to be 72 again. They brought a plastic bag with patient belongings printed on the side. Inside, the cracked phone, a pair of socks that were not mine, and a flimsy wallet someone had mistaken for kindness. 2 bus passes tucked into it like apologies. No keys, no ID, no leather satchel. I held the bag by the handles and felt how light my life was. A volunteer found me a thrift store cardigan from a donation closet. It smelled faintly of cedar in somebody else's hallway. I put it on and felt the weight of it like a hand between my shoulder blades telling me to keep moving. The social worker returned, set my 2 printed copies on the tray, and slipped them into a cheap envelope. "Keep these flat," she said. "Do you have a way home?" "I have places to stop first," I said. My voice sounded steady. Inside, something paced and counted. Phone, copies, bus passes. That was my whole inventory. I added one more item by force: my legs. I walked to the elevator like a man learning to walk in a new city, knees reporting, breath reporting. The doors opened on the lobby, and a wash of normal life came with it. Families in clumps, a toddler dragging a stuffed bear by the leg, a woman laughing too loudly at something on her screen because she needed to. The coffee stand hissed. I stood there for a second, smelling the bitter and thinking of Ruth insisting hospital coffee is still coffee if you believe hard enough. I bought a cup with one of the bus passes, cash conversion the clerk offered, left 2 sips in it, and threw it away because my stomach had not yet decided if it belonged to me. Outside, October air met the hospital's warm breath and folded it into cold. The curb was a tightrope. I reached the bus shelter and sat. My hands shook. I told them to stop, and they did. The bus arrived with a sigh like a horse. I climbed aboard, offered the pass, and took a seat facing forward so I could see what was coming. The city looked different from a bus window, lower, more honest. I watched storefronts scroll by, pharmacy, pawn shop, a diner with a sign that had lost one letter and kept going anyway. People got on and off with bundles held close. I thought about James changing a light bulb in my kitchen and about how proud he had looked when it lit. I pictured his children at my table, the one I had sanded so many times the grain knew my hands. Family should be a lock. It had become a door you could kick in. I got off near the county building and took the stone steps one at a time, feeling them through the hospital socks and the thin shoes they had found for me. Inside, it smelled like paper and air conditioning. I asked for what I needed in a voice that did not tremble because I would not give that to anyone. I waited on a hard bench while a copier somewhere hummed like a hive. I did not look at the pages until I was outside again. Not yet. I slid them into the envelope with the printed text. The envelope had weight now. That steadied me. I walked 2 blocks to a pharmacy and bought a small spiral notebook, a pen, and a bottle of water with the coins I had left after the coffee. The cashier glanced at my cardigan and then at my face with the soft alarm people get when they recognize age and trouble traveling together. "You take care now," she said, as if it were something I could pick up and put in my pocket. I wrote the date on the first page in big letters. I wrote left hospital and the time. I wrote bus shelter, coffee, county steps. I wrote it the way I used to write measurements on joists. Exactly, because later my future would depend on not guessing. By noon, my legs were sending up flares. I ignored them. I caught another bus and let it carry me the last miles toward the life I knew by smell and angle. The closer we got, the more familiar the trees looked, the more the tilt of the sun felt like a hand I recognized. I pressed the stop cord a block early so I could walk the corner in my own time. The street had changed nothing for me, the same squeaky elm, the same crack in the sidewalk shaped like a crooked Y. A neighbor's dog barked behind a fence, bored with his own warning. I stood at the end of my driveway and looked up at my house, the place I had built one paycheck at a time, the place where Ruth's portrait hung, and the violin slept, and my grandchildren dropped their mittens, and I pretended not to see. There was a sign planted in the grass that did not belong there. It was glossy and cheerful, a smile in the wrong room. The font was modern. The phone number was not mine. The wind moved it a little, and it clicked against the stake like a loose tooth. I felt the taste of metal rise in my mouth. I walked up the path. I could see through the front window into the living room. From the street, nothing looked wrong because houses know how to keep their faces. I reached for my keys before remembering there were none in my pocket. My hand hovered where the hook by the door would be inside, a silly reflex with nowhere to land. I put my palm on the door. The wood was cool. I could feel through it the echo of years, the scrape of chair legs, the pop of the heater, Ruth's laugh caught in the stairwell and sent back down like a gift. I stood there a long moment and let my pulse settle. I had come home. It was waiting to see if I still belonged. The door moved under my palm. Not a welcome, an inside draft, the kind you feel when strangers are walking your floors. A shape crossed the hall, a man in paint-spotted jeans with a roll of blue tape on his wrist. He glanced at me through the glass, then away, the efficient not seeing of someone told to keep the entry clear. I knocked. The sound came back wrong, thin, as if the house were wearing someone else's clothes. The door opened 6 inches on a chain. A young woman with a clipboard peered out. She had the bright, busy look of a person who solves problems by labeling them. "Hi there." "We have a showing in 20, she said. "Contractor access is around back." "I live here," I said. My voice felt like it had grit in it. "This is my home." The clipboard smile faltered, then reset. "Oh, are you with the estate?" she asked, making the word cheerful, like balloons at a wake. "If you need to grab anything, please coordinate with the trustee. We have instructions. Instructions." The chain gave a tiny, impatient rattle. Behind her, my entry table sat naked except for a white bowl holding a realtor's stack of business cards and a glossy flyer with my house smiling too wide. The hooks by the door were empty. No keys, no dog leash that Ruth kept there long after we said goodbye to Molly because it makes the house look alive, Arthur. The woman handed me a card through the crack. I took it because taking felt stronger than begging. The cardstock was heavy. The name printed on it had my last name in it, and not because it was mine. My mouth went dry. I looked past her into a living room that knew me and did not show it. Painter's tape X'd off a square on the wall where Ruth's portrait had hung. 2 pale holes above like eyes. A ladder leaned against the sadness like it could fix it. On the couch sat a throw pillow I did not own, with a slogan about gathering. Everything familiar had been thinned and fluffed, like a face powdered for a viewing. A man in a polo shirt breezed into view, talking to the air. "We will move the console table there. Light reads better from that angle. Please keep the violin out of sight. It signals fussy." He turned and finally saw me. "Sir?" His face arranged itself into a professional puzzle. "We cannot allow walk-ins before 3. Are you here to measure for the sale?" "The violin," I said, because the word had touched a live wire in me. "Where is the violin?" "In storage per instruction," he said. "All sentimental items removed to avoid, attachment during showings. Easier for buyers." Trustee approved trustee again, like a set of footsteps on my back. My hands wanted to reach past the chain and take the house by the shoulders and turn it toward me so it could remember its own name. I thought of James as a boy, turning his cereal bowl into a boat and bumping it against Ruth's elbow until she laughed and surrendered some toast for cargo. I thought of my granddaughter's small fingers on the violin case latch. I looked at the pale ghost of my wife's portrait and felt something old and steady inside me sit up and put its boots on. "I am not with any estate," I said. "I am Arthur Hale." Silence flows differently when it has weight. The woman's eyes flicked to the card she had given me, then back to my face. "All access is through the trustee," she repeated, softer. She closed the door gently. The chain slid into place with a final, house-breaking click. I stepped backward into the yard because I would not give them the show of me pounding my own door. The sign in the grass had a clear pocket on the front. I slid out a flyer. "Price reduced," it said. "Motivated timeline." Photos of my kitchen with Ruth's copper pot missing from its hook as if someone had erased a punctuation mark. The bottom line read, "Contact Nora H. Family Representative." I did not need the last letters. My eyes supplied them and then closed around them like a fist. For a breath I could not get air all the way down. Heat climbed into my cheeks. I counted. 1, 2, 3. The way I used to when I held a live wire, waiting for the breaker to surrender. This is not panic, I told myself. This is current. Use it. I looked at the window and saw my reflection. Old man, hospital cardigan, jaw set in a way Ruth would have read as decision. I set the flyer back in its pocket, neat as a folded flag. I would not carry their advertisement around like grief. "Arthur?" a voice called. Mrs. Alvarez from next door stood by her mailbox, her hand over her heart like someone saying grace. "They said—" She stopped herself on the edge of a story. "Are you all right?" Are any of my things? I could not finish the sentence. She understood anyway. She came a step closer and lowered her voice as if the house might be listening. They came with a locksmith. Boxes, so many. The girl with the clipboard told me you had arrangements. She used that word. I told her I would bring you a casserole, and she said the homeowner was not accepting food at this time. Her mouth pinched. I did not like her. Did you see my grandchildren? I asked, the question arriving from somewhere softer than my ribs. No, dear, she said. Just the wife. And your son once, at night. He looked like he had swallowed a stone. She hesitated. Do you need a ride? Yes. Lived in my throat before pride could evict it. To the bank, I said. Now. She fetched her keys. Her old sedan smelled like cinnamon gum and hand lotion. The dashboard had a crack that made a tiny canyon. I held the envelope with the hospital copies flat against my knees like a fragile thing and watched my house get smaller in the side mirror, then disappear behind the turn. My hands hummed. I did not notice the pain in my side until the car stopped at a red light and everything went quiet enough to hear it. Do you want me to come in with you? She asked. Thank you, I said, and shook my head. This part is mine. We pulled up to the branch I have used since before James could tie his shoes. The glass doors wore a decal that said, cheerfully, Ask us about your future. I pressed my palm against the handle, and it was cool the way the house door had been cool, but this one yielded. Air conditioning hit my face. A little too cold. A man in a tie said, Welcome in, the way a flight attendant says it after turbulence. I nodded and stepped onto the tile, feeling the give of it through the thin hospital soles. As I took my place in line, I let my breath settle into a slow, stubborn rhythm. Whatever had been done, I would look it in the face. The past week had hollowed me out. The next 10 minutes would tell me what they had put inside the empty space. The teller called, Next! And I stepped up as if the tile might tip under my weight. I need to see my balances, I said. All accounts. Today her smile was the kind you put on to make lines move faster. She tapped, read, then glanced toward the desks. I am going to have Mr. Collins help you, she said. Please take a seat. Mr. Collins was young, careful, and practiced at speaking softly. He led me to a glassed-in office with a potted plant that had lost interest in thriving. He asked for my name and slid a keyboard closer, as if proximity would make the machine kinder. A screen reflected on his glasses. I watched my life flicker there without being allowed to see it. His jaw tightened by one tooth's worth. It looks like your accounts were consolidated last Wednesday, he said, voice tuned to neutral. Funds were moved to a family trust. There are notes that a trustee is managing. Day-to-day trust. Day-to-day. Words that should have meant safe and ordinary. They tasted like metal instead. I did not create a trust, I said. My hands stayed flat on my knees, palms down, because they wanted to make fists. There is a document on file, he said, and an email authorization. We do not keep originals here, but I can print what we have. He was already printing, the small mercy of competence. Would you like transaction histories from the last 30 days? He did not wait for my answer. The printer started to chatter. He slid the pages to me in a neat stack. Top page. My name in a font I recognized from friendlier letters. Below it, Hale Family Trust. A date that should have belonged to me in a hospital bed. A balance line that used to make me feel the quiet pride of work done right now lay flat near zero, a river drained for someone else's field. Show me where it went, I said. He pointed. Automated transfers. Sweep to trust. Cashier's check issued. A debit labeled with a company name that sounded like a nursing home and a strip mall had a child. The notes column had a phrase that made my teeth ache. Per family directive. There were 2 new names authorized for online access. One was mine, one was not. He flipped to a scanned signature page. I saw my name, slanted and confident where mine turns careful and square at the end of a long day. It looked like me in a photograph taken by a liar. I traced the bottom of the page with my finger without touching it, the way you do at a museum when you want to feel paint you are not allowed to feel. "Who brought this in?" I asked. He frowned just enough to count. "The branch note says family representative." He read the timestamp. Late. The same night I had been counting ceiling tiles instead of sheep. For a moment the room leaned. I did not. I put the papers into the envelope from the hospital and smoothed the edge, meaning first shock, later. Money is not a number. It is time converted. It is roof and oatmeal and violin strings and the right to hang a portrait and have it stay. "I need copies of every change and the dates," I said. "Print the email headers too, and whatever you have on who authorized access. Then I need you to note in my profile that I am disputing all changes." He hesitated, then nodded and typed. The printer answered with a steady hum that felt like breath returning. He collected the pages, squared them, passed them to me. "I am sorry," he said. He sounded like he meant it and also like he was afraid of meaning anything too loudly. "Hold the rest of your sorry," I said, not unkindly. "I will need it if this takes longer than it should." He managed a ghost of a smile. "Understood." I stepped back into the bright bank lobby feeling both lighter and heavier. Lighter because now the monster had a face. Heavier because it was the face I had expected and still did not want. I stood by the brochure rack under a poster about saving for college and scrolled my cracked phone. The charger at the hospital had bought me this moment. I typed elder law attorney and the name that came up twice in the top results, and then again on the door of a building across the street. Pike and Landon. The elevator in their lobby made a sound like a cautious cough. The carpet on the 3rd floor was tired but clean. The receptionist had a sweater draped over her chair and a tone that had sent many men to sit down and breathe before saying something they could not unsay. "I need someone today," I said. "Not next week. Not when it is convenient. Today." She looked at my envelope, my cardigan, my face. "One moment," she said, and disappeared through a door. Donna Pike came out herself. Gray hair pinned tight, eyes that did not blink more than they had to. She held out her hand and I felt the old rhythm of my trade return. Shake, look a person in the eye, decide to trust the work, not the smile. We sat in a small conference room where a plant was thriving in a stubborn way that encouraged me. I laid out what I had the way I used to lay out tools before opening a panel. Text message, visitor log time, bank prints, the fake signature that wanted to be me. She did not interrupt. She made a short list on a yellow pad in the square, neat hand of someone who had learned to write so judges could read it. When I finished, she tapped her pen once and said, "We will move fast. First, notices to the bank and the realtor to hold everything. Second, a formal dispute on the accounts. Third, a message to the other side that you are awake." Her voice made awake feel like a verb you could point at a problem. She slid a retainer agreement over with 2 fingers. I read it because I refuse to be the kind of man who signs without reading, even when the room is burning. Then I signed. "I need one more thing," I said. "I am going to meet my son." Her eyes lifted. "Alone?" "In public," I said. "Neutral ground. I do not want to catch him. I want to see him." She considered that like a good doctor considers surgery. "Pick a place with witnesses and a clock," she said. "Sit with your back to a wall. Do not raise your voice. Ask questions that begin with when and why, never how could you. Let him choose his own rope, and call me after practical advice has a weight that can hold you up." I folded it alongside the papers and slid everything back into the envelope. She walked me to the lobby. As I pressed the elevator button, she said, "Mr. Hale, whatever you hear, remember, meaning matters more than apology. People apologize to keep you from acting. Meaning keeps you moving." Outside, the sky had shifted toward evening, that hour when shadows lengthen and even good houses look a little haunted. I sent one text to James. "Meet me at Vernon's at 6. Come alone. This is not optional." I watched the bubbles appear, vanish, return, like a fish testing the surface. "Okay, Dad." 6. I arrived early and chose the corner booth that let me see the door and the street beyond. The waitress poured coffee without asking. I wrapped my hands around the cup and felt the heat inform my bones that they still belonged to me. I laid the envelope on the table and kept one palm on it, the way you rest a hand on a sleeping dog to tell it you are there. When James finally pushed through the glass door, a bell tinkled like the start of a small ceremony. He saw me, then the envelope, and stopped for a heartbeat at the edge of our old life. Then he came forward, and I braced for the truth to arrive wearing my son's face. When James walked in, he scanned for me like a man hoping for an exit. He sat, folded his hands, then unfolded them, wiped a ring of water off the table with his thumb. "Thank you for coming," I said. He nodded, eyes on the envelope under my palm. "You look better," he said, and meant it. "When did you add Nora to my bank access?" I asked. I kept my voice level, the way the lawyer had told me. When, then why? "The night you were admitted," he said. "It was late. The nurse said you were in and out and there might be decisions. Nora said if we set up a trust, bills would not get stuck. She said that is how families do it now." He winced at his own sentence. "I know how it sounds." "Why was my house listed 2 days later?" He blinked. "We were told moving fast helps. Staging, timelines, all that. Nora said you had been talking about downsizing and—" He saw my face and stopped. "I did not walk through your bedroom with strangers, Dad." I stayed in the living room. I did not like any of it. I slid the printed text across. He read it and his shoulders rose, then fell. "That is awful," he said. "I did not know she sent that to you." He swallowed. "She sent me something different. She told me you were critical. She is terrible with fear. It comes out like jokes. I am not defending it. It is indefensible. The word trustee shows up on every page I have printed," I said. "Your name sits next to hers. You did not stumble into this. You stood there." He rubbed his jaw, a new habit. "I signed where she told me." "That is the truth. I read some, not all. She said we were safeguarding. She said sepsis can make people say they want one thing 1 hour and another the next. She said you had asked her to handle paperwork earlier this month when you got dizzy and I came by." He looked up. "You did say you were tired of mail, Dad." "I said I was tired of junk mail," I said, "not of owning my life." He was quiet a moment. The waitress brought coffee and left us to it. The clock over the counter ticked loud enough to count. "You think I wanted your picture of Mom taken down?" he asked. "Do you think I wanted a sign on that lawn?" I hated it. I told Nora to wait. She said waiting would cost money we do not have. She is better at pushing than I am at stopping. That is not an excuse. That is what happened. "Did you change my emergency contact at the hospital?" I asked. "I told them to add Nora," he said. "They asked who was primary, and she said she was—" It sounded efficient. I should have said you. I did not stop it. "Why did you not ask me what I wanted?" I asked. "You had a phone." He stared at the text again. "The doctor said you were confused. I did not want to put you through decisions. I wanted to shield you. I thought that was love, or some clumsy form of it." He let out a breath. "I have been scared for months, Dad." "You fell twice. You left the stove on once. I talked to kids all day about risk and planning, and when it was you, I did not handle it right. I let someone else drive because I thought she knew the route." A small, bitter warmth moved through me. It is easier to forgive fear than greed. It is not the same as trusting it. Here is what matters, I said. My name was used where it should not have been. My accounts were moved. My house was set to be sold while I was asleep. Whatever sentences you hang on it, those are the facts. He nodded, slow. What do you want me to do? First, stop the bleeding, I said. Text the realtor that there will be no showings, no offers, no access, while ownership is disputed. Today. Tell her that is my instruction, not yours. She will say there are contracts, he said. She will say there is a timeline. Then she can read a new timeline, I said. Second, gather the trail. Make me a list. Who you spoke to, when, what documents you saw, where you signed. If there were emails, forward them to the address I will give you. Third, decide which side of this you are on. His pupils tightened at that last, but he did not look away. I am on your side. I am also married. Those two facts fight inside me. I do not know how to make them stop. You do not, I said. You choose which one you will live with. He looked down at his hands. If I cooperate, if I tell you everything, will you try not to send her to jail? I will not choose charges, I said. That is not my job. My job is to be clear. She chose her actions. You chose yours. I am choosing mine. He nodded once, like a man accepting the weight of something he once thought was air. I will send the texts, he said. He pulled out his phone. I watched his thumbs hesitate over the keyboard, then move. He showed me the screen. Showings paused, no access, owner disputing. He pressed send. The bubble slid away. Keys, I said. He reached into his pocket and placed a key ring on the table. My house key looked small among the new ones. He added a folded sheet of paper, alarm code, written in his square hand. I told myself I was helping, he said. That is the worst part. It is so easy to name harm help when it lets you sleep. He cleared his throat. If this lands in court, I will tell the truth. All of it. Even the parts that make me look weak. I felt something steady click back into place behind my ribs. Good, I said. Weak is not the same as bad. Lying makes both. He nodded toward the envelope. Do you have a lawyer? Yes. Then I will not pretend I can fix this with a family talk, he said. I will talk to mine anyway. He rubbed his temples. She will call you. She will be herself. I expect that, I said. I also expect you to keep the children out of this until there is nothing left to throw. His eyes flashed alarm. Of course. We sat with the noise of the diner around us. Somewhere behind the counter, dishes clinked. A radio found the end of a song. He finally stood. I am sorry, he said. Not to make you stop. Just, I am. I heard you, I said. It does not change what I have to do. He nodded again, then put his hand out. We shook. Awkward. Brief. He left without the bell seeming to notice. I stared at the keyring on the table and the code in his hand. They were not trophies. They were a line drawn. I slipped them into my pocket and felt the old shape of ownership meet bone. Outside, the evening was clean and cool. I texted my attorney. Proceed. I am ready. Determination does not feel like fire. It feels like a level held steady, bubble-centered, hand-sure. I would fight with what I had. Dates, names, rooms, the simple insistence that my life belonged to me until I chose otherwise. If that insistence put people I loved under a light they did not like, that would be because of what they had done, not because I had decided to see it. The time had come. I was calm before, but now the only sounds I am waiting for are the bailiff's cuffs and one word from the judge, guilty. I slept at my neighbor's house. My house felt steadier if I watched it breathe. On the table, I laid everything out the way I used to set tools before opening a panel. Phone and charger, notebook, pen, 2 copies of the message, bank prints, the visitor sheet, the realtor flyer. I wrote times on sticky notes and stuck them to the top edges like tabs. I ironed a shirt I had not worn since Ruth's service and set out the green tie my granddaughter once said looked like forest candy. I set the keys on the table. They would return to their hook when the house did. Nora texted close to midnight. "We can sort this without drama. Think of the children." I let the phone light my palm and then faced it down on the table. Thinking of the children is what brought me this far. Donna called once, brief and calm. "Sleep if you can," she said. "Bring yourself and the truth." I made tea, drank half, and watched the steam disappear. At 2 a.m, I wrote one line in the notebook. I belong to myself. Dawn came in patient inches. I showered, shaved carefully, and talked to my hands when they tried to hurry. Oatmeal because it sits well. Shoes that do not slip. I slipped the papers into a new envelope, thick, undecorated, and the envelope into a canvas bag because a bag on my shoulder makes me walk straighter. Before I left, I stood in the hall where Ruth's portrait had been. The wall looked back, blank as a mouth closed against a lie. I touched the paint once and locked the door. The courthouse steps were cold and clean. Inside, the metal detector hummed and the bailiff nodded me through after my belt set it off. People on benches looked like versions of the same story. Worried, angry, polite. James was in the hallway outside our courtroom, hands in his pockets like a man still deciding whether to keep them. He looked at me and did not try to smile. "I will answer straight," he said. "I will not pretend." I nodded. We did not touch. It felt like respect. Nora arrived the way weather arrives, decisive, practiced smile, a binder hugged to her chest as if hugging could make it softer. She did not look at me so much as aim her expression in my direction. Her attorney spoke into her ear and she nodded too quickly. She was building a version of me with words, the kind that sounds tidy from a distance. Donna appeared at my side, placed a hand on the back of the chair beside me and said, "Short answers." Dates. Do not chase her story. Tell yours I breathed it in like instruction on a job site. The courtroom was wood and quiet. Flags stood in the corner like witnesses. Air conditioning made the back of my neck cool under my collar. "All rise," the bailiff said, and we did, and I felt the old drill sergeant posture return to my spine. When we sat, the room shifted into that particular stillness where every paper makes a sound. Across the aisle, Nora's eyes were busy, flicking from the judge to the gallery to me. James kept his gaze on the table. The time had come. I had been calm. Now the only sounds I am waiting for are the click of the bailiff's cuffs and a single word from the judge. Guilty. They called my name and asked me to step forward. My palm met the Bible. My voice said, "I do," without wobbling. "State your name," the clerk said. "Arthur Hale," I answered, and the syllables felt like weight placed properly on a beam. Questions came, and I kept to the map. When I was admitted, when the message arrived, when the sign appeared in my yard, when I found my accounts emptied of their years. I did not look at Nora when her lawyer said the word confused. I looked at the printed page and read the text exactly as it was written. I heard James swallow behind me and did not turn. I told the room what happened in the language I trust. Mornings and doors and keys and the exact minute a house forgot my name. I spoke it plain, because in plain speech a man can stand up and not fall. And while I talked, I felt the house in me settle, as if, at last, it recognized its owner. I stayed with the things that matter when the world starts moving furniture. Mornings, doors, keys, dates. I told the room about the hospital light, the empty drawer, the cracked phone, the message that chose my funeral over my future. I told them what I found at the house. Tape ghosts where Ruth's portrait had hung, a stranger telling me to use the back door, a sign that smiled with someone else's teeth. I told them about the bank screen reflecting my life in a young man's glasses. I did not give the room my rage, I gave it my receipts. There was a moment when Nora's lawyer tried to slide me into a word, confused, and I felt the old anger test the leash. I kept it short and plain. I was sick, I said. I was not consenting. The judge watched my face the way a man inspects a beam before he steps on it. I let him. Then the room emptied into silence, the kind that has gravity. The judge straightened the papers, lined them up until their corners were square, and spoke to the space between us all. Possession of the residence returns to Mr. Hale immediately, he said. Listing suspended, showings canceled. All keys, codes, and access to accounts are to be surrendered by close of business today. No further changes in titles or accounts pending final review. He paused. Given the discrepancies in dates and testimony, the court will refer the matter to the district attorney for review of potential fraud and forgery. Counsel, you will receive copies. Nora's mouth opened, then shut. Her knee began a quick, involuntary bounce under the table. She leaned toward her lawyer and whispered in a stream that had no commas. James closed his eyes and let out a breath he had been storing for weeks. My hands found each other and stilled, palms meeting like old friends. The bailiff's next case felt like a bell rung for me. The rest of it, investigations, charges, the long corridor of consequences, stood up in my periphery and waited for my attention. I did not give it yet. I was thinking about the front door. I was thinking about the hook where my keys belonged, and the window in the stairwell that sticks if you lift it wrong, and the kettle that whistles one note flat, and the exact place on the living room wall where the paint is a shade warmer because the sun loves it at 4 p.m. In the hallway, James approached, head bowed enough to be honest. "Do you want me to come by?" he asked. His voice sounded like someone who had set down a heavy thing and was not sure what to do with his hands. "Not today," I said. "Change your passwords. Write down everything you signed. Keep the children out of the spray. We will talk." He nodded, and for once he did not try to make the moment gentle. He just took it. Nora stood 10 feet away, hands around her binder like it might bolt. She looked at me with a calculation that used to pass for charm. I did not meet it with anything. The law would ask for her soon enough. I had a house to breathe back into itself. Outside, the courthouse steps felt less steep. The air had that clean edge the day gets when you are finally moving in the right direction. I called a locksmith from the sidewalk and booked him for the afternoon. I called the realtor number on the sign and left one sentence. "Remove your sign and return my belongings." I called the utilities to make sure no one had decided to helpfully shut off my heat. Practicalities first, righteousness later. Righteousness does not keep a house warm. On the ride home, I took inventory out loud like a man checking a load. Replace the cylinders, open the windows, let the stale go. Find the nails still waiting where Ruth's portrait belonged. Lemon oil for the frame, a steady hand for the ladder. The violin would come home when it could. For now, I would set out the case's empty space and make room for its return. Oatmeal in the morning, clean sheets tonight, keys on the hook, papers in their drawer, copies made, dates in the notebook, the pen where it belongs. A house earns you back when you keep your promises to it. As we turned onto my street, the sign in my yard flashed white in the sun. It would be gone by dusk, one way or another. I felt the old steadiness in my legs, that quiet readiness work gives you when you know which board to pull and which to leave alone. Somewhere behind me, the new case against Nora had begun to stack itself into folders and tasks. It could wait its turn. I stepped out of the car and smelled cut grass and distant coffee and underneath the particular dust of my own home. I touched the front door. Wood under paint. My name, even if the letters were invisible, still written there. I called the locksmith first. By dusk, the front cylinder matched the key James returned. The bolt slid back like a breath finally let go. I was not thinking about the next hearing or a sentence or even the word guilty. I was thinking about the simple dignity of putting things back where they belong. I was thinking about my grandchildren's shoes by the mat and a kettle finding its pitch and a portrait meeting the light at 4 in the afternoon. Justice could wear its robe and take its notes. My work now was a house, a nail, a quiet room remembering who lives there. Weeks later, James came at dusk with a toolbox and no speech prepared. We fixed the sagging hinge on the back gate because a gate asks to be fixed before a heart. He handed me a small package without ceremony, the violin, back from storage, the bow re-haired. "I cannot undo it," he said, eyes on the latch, "but I can carry what comes next." We stood there a long minute, listening to the yard settle. The district attorney moved fast after that. The notary folded, the paper trail didn't. In court, James answered without embroidery. He didn't rescue himself and he didn't bury me. Nora's binder ran out of pages before the truth ran out of facts. When the cuffs finally clicked, the sound wasn't triumph so much as alignment, the room returning to level. I felt what I had told myself from the start settle into my bones. The best revenge is justice, because justice stays done. Sundays returned in smaller pieces. Eggs, low heat, the children's shoes by the mat. James comes early now, and we work before we talk. Filters, a leaning post, the finicky window that needs a palm flat to lift. He brings receipts for everything, his idea, and leaves with a list I wrote. Counseling appointments, passwords changed, a letter he'll someday read to his kids about mistakes and repairs. I redrafted my will and locked the papers where they belong. Keys live on their hook. Order is a mercy you can make with your hands. The children learned the violin's first clean note in my living room. We didn't speak their mother's name in anger. We spoke about choices and about telling the full truth, even when it shakes. After dinner, James and I walked the block once around. He didn't promise the moon. He promised tomorrow. Some bridges aren't rebuilt. They're boarded one plank at a time until they hold weight again. At 4 in the afternoon, the light finds Ruth's portrait the way it always did. The kettle takes its breath and whistles one note flat. I touch the frame and then the wall, grateful for wood, for paint, for simple things put back where they belong. Justice wears no smile. It hums. In the end, I chose it over vengeance, and the house, my life, answered by standing up straight. In my place, would you have chosen justice the way I did? Tell me what you would have done in the comments.
My grandpa's worst really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.